Hi, my name is Josie. You're listening to the Yoga Local podcast, which I'm recording from our studio here in Wellingborough. Welcome. Today we're going to have an answer about friendship, and specifically the friendship that we have with ourselves. Now, I'm always talking about the transformative effects of yoga, and there's nothing more transformative than uncovering your true self. But a lot of folks do kind of come to yoga with a specific agenda or a specific set of boxes that they want to tick, and they're not really or usually aligned to self-realization, even though yoga is a practice of yoga and self-realization. So what do people come to practice for? Generally, my experience is, there's just a general feeling of dis-ease. Maybe they come wanting to be able to sleep better. Sleep's a problem. Aching backs, dodgy hips, feelings of anxiety and overwhelm. And they're all great goals for as wanting to start a yoga practice, but I would consider them all low-hanging fruits. They're the symptoms and not the causes, and we need to get to the cause. And yoga, as it's meant to be taught, is offered as this complete practice that moves us beyond our suffering, beyond our imbalances, and reclaim a deep connection with who we truly are. And as a result of that, all our practices here are designed to be complete, to move you to that state of yoga. I don't expect you to understand what that means entirely yet. But what I do want you to roll with is this idea that yoga isn't kind of a pick and mix affair, which is often offered in that way. Yoga for back pain, yoga for opening hips, yoga for stress, yoga for anxiety. Basically, what's happening here is we're fragmenting a complete science. And when we do that, we miss a huge opportunity to really get the full benefits of the practice, and it really just kind of feeds into our desire for instant wins, which, by the way, usually are only fleeting, because again, we're going for the low-hanging fruit. We're not getting to the root of the cause of those issues, and so they bounce back and repeat on us. So I understand this because this is my story. 10 years ago, when my kids were still pretty young in school, still needing their mum, don't need their mum now so much anyway. And I was hanging on to a profession in journalism. I was doing excessive exercise to de-stress. That's what I was led to believe would help. But I found myself constantly exhausted. I'd burnt out. My relationships were suffering. I didn't really feel like I was winning at anything, parenting, in my career, in my relationships. And I felt completely disconnected from myself. I took up yoga, much like those people that come into my studio now with a specific agenda. I wanted to feel, I wanted to fix my back. I wanted to be in a better place. I wanted to get myself back so that I could go back into that world that I'd so skillfully created. I wanted to be able to work harder, faster, and run and do all those things that were actually putting me in a place of high anxiety and stress. But it wasn't long before I had the epiphany, that digital download, that aha moment, that what I created was a far from perfect life. I've been neglecting my own needs in pursuit of success. That really wasn't feeling like success at all. And it really was just about meeting the needs and expectations of others. So in that process, I completely lost sense of who I was. And this realization was a turning point. And you see, the quality of our friendships can really make or break our well-being. And this applies to ourselves as much as the friendships that we have with others. So I invite you to take some time here, get stuck into how yoga can help you develop your relationship with yourself. We start to create this this number one relationship, become your own bestie. And by doing so, that helps us to start to transform our connections with others. So first of all, there's always an education piece, I feel, especially if you've never practiced before, or if you've been practicing more in a kind of Western model in gyms where, the philosophy is not really being taught. It's become a fitness trend in many quarters. So I may have to get you to rethink about what it is to practice. It is a practice of self-discovery. It's a journey, overused word, that we band about these days, but really it's a path and it's a journey towards understanding who we really are. So you could consider it as your ultimate friendship quest, where this ultimate prize is an unbreakable bond with you, yourself. Fancy some of that? Okay, so here's how yoga teaches this stuff, and be warned, Sanskrit terms are part of the deal. I don't shy away from using the Sanskrit. You are way capable of learning new words and new ways of new terminology. So I'm not about to shy away from teaching them, but I'm not also going to use them as a way to befuddle or bemuse or to confuse you. They're important Sanskrit words which can help us to walk this pathway of befriending ourselves. So first of all, yoga would invite us to address what are called the kleshas, and these are the coatings, the coverings. These are the illusions that get in the way of us understanding who we are at our core. So one of the first one is a Sanskrit term called avidya, and that is ignorance in its loose translation. I always invite you to just have a loose understanding of these words as you're taught them. So it's ignorance. It's whatever's getting in the way: flavorings, coatings, conditionings, our cultures, society. Most of us are blissfully unaware of who we are. We've just become little byproducts of our environment and the people that raised us and the people that have most influenced us. And we forget that there's this unique, beautiful soul underneath. And we also maybe push that part of us away. We reject it. We don't understand it. And therefore, it's not nourished, it's not nurtured, to the point where, we become very soulless, right? And some people more than others. So how do we find our way back? Well, it's by addressing the kleshas. Yoga kind of peels back these layers of ignorance and starts to help you just to see your true self. So just imagine meeting the real you. Sounds like a date worth keeping, right? Okay, but it does take work. Yoga is not a passive practice. It's going to take action. It's going to take right action. Okay, that's for another conversation. But just stay with me along this. What's getting in the way of me understanding who I truly am? So first of all, ignorance of that you are a soul. Asmita is the second klesha. And that's when we identify with our ego. We all have an ego. It's got a very real job to do. We don't dismiss the ego. It's part of our personality layer. So it helps us to operate as a human in this world. It's a condensed version, an expression of who we are. But it also, because it's condensed, because it's limited, it makes us say things like, oh, I'm not enough, or I must be perfect. And through yoga, we learn to spot the ego when it's kind of getting in the way and limiting our ability to move past our constructed boundaries and borders. The ego has found a way to operate in the world. It's a survival mechanism. It's a way we show up. It's when we tell ourselves, well, I'm this type of person, I'm that type of person, I like this, I like that. It's all our aversions and repulsions. It's how we've become to identify ourselves, but it is a limited expression of who we are, and therefore it's not true self. Okay, so when the ego kicks in, we learn to start to take its power away, And that's like a real benefit, 'cause it's like telling your inner critic to, take a hike and gently start to welcome the true self back to the party. And I mentioned this one earlier, Raja, and the fourth one, Devesha, which are attachments and aversions. So I think we're all guilty of chasing our pleasures and running away from discomfort. And again, this is where yoga is a practice which will create friction. It will create moments where you'll feel uncomfortable, because often we are running from discomfort, and yoga's teaching us to embrace the moment and be in it, whether it's a joyous moment or whether it's something more creating sadness. It could be a teary-eyed event that you're dealing with, or a joyous celebration. What we're trying to recognize is that it's all part of the journey, and to the degree to which we repel and push and pull and grab and grasp is to the degree that we are still limiting our potential to grow. So understanding what you're pulling from, pushing towards, starts to open the door to every situation in your life. Every emotion, every feeling becomes a guest in your life that you can hold space for regardless. So our practices are helping us to create that capacity to hold ourselves still and really reflect on, who am I? Who am I? What are my attachments? What are my aversions? Where have they come from? How is that forming the ego personality? How is that clouding the judgment of who I am? Where is it bringing in ignorance? And how then can we start to shift into something with more potential? So it's about breaking free from our limited sense of self. Not telling the ego to do one, but just recognizing its role and how it can limit your ascension, essentially, into true self. So how do we break free from the glaciers and start to embrace this journey? So at our studio, and I can't vouch for others, but we work with the traditional science, Hatha Yoga, a specific set of practices, sequences that are designed to alter our state, which then gives us the capacity to embrace every experience, every emotion, and every insight as it arrives. So on our mats, that translates as we're inviting you to greet each moment with an open mind and open arms, and then treating yourself with kindness when discomfort starts to surface. Whether you're feeling on top of the world or in the doldrums, every feeling has its place. We need to validate those feelings. And then we can start to imagine how much of a difference would we make to ourselves if we treated ourselves with the same kindness as we would show our bestie. And often we're not doing that. So this is our safe space to welcome in how we're actually offering ourselves kindness when we're not feeling our most optimum. And then through sustainable progress with Hatha Yoga, with the science of yoga, we guide you through the moon, sun, fire stages of practice, which basically ensures your journey is not only sustainable, but also safe. We want to arrive and meet ourselves when we have done the work to stabilize our mind so that we can hold ourselves in that space. Otherwise, the mind's just going to reject and pull away and get in the way. And also, we need to be energetically tuned and aligned. So we need to have mastered our energy, first of all. Our energy body is something that we can sense into and start to direct it skillfully. It's not a race, right? There's lots to learn. I never shy away from emphasizing that there's no instant wins, but there are little perks along the way. But over time and with practice, we start to unburden ourselves, and we let go of the heavy restrictions that we've placed on ourselves, that society has placed on ourselves, that our cultures have placed on ourselves. And in that uncoating and layering, as we move the dust, as we eliminate the effect of the glaciers, we find discover the lighter part of who we are that rests beneath. So making a date with yourself is like this brilliant act of self-love, and through yoga and showing up for yourself and being consistent and reminding yourself on a daily basis that you are tough and that you can face these misunderstandings, you can face the things that have kind of got you caught in a trap, and you can nurture yourself beyond them. And there's a real sense of self-belief that starts to infuse your life, and we start to trust ourselves again, and we start to love ourselves again. You might be wondering how a lack of self-friendship shows up. So if you recognize these, then we maybe need to do some work on our befriending. So negative self-talk is a biggie, and we often say you wouldn't dream of talking to anyone really unless you were a real unpleasant person, in a way that it's, you wouldn't speak to yourself you wouldn't speak to other people in the way sometimes that you speak to yourself, right? We also self-sabotage, so we tell ourselves that we can't when we can. We hold ourselves back from joy when it's available to us. We move away from the opportunities that are presented to us because maybe we don't feel like we're good enough, or that we deserve it even. It can also show up as feeling disconnected, feeling lonely, and struggling to connect with other people on a deeper level. So all your friendships are, surface level, or maybe just relationships that are feeding your ego and your personality sense of self. And we need to start to find friendships that help us tune into our real self. So how does life improve when you start to work with this practice? More positive self-image, right? If we're not berating ourselves all the time, and if we can start to recognize that those thoughts are just thoughts, they're not who we are, and we don't have to identify with them, we can start to see ourselves in a kinder light. So we have a more positive self-image, which makes us more confident in other situations. We start to then become empowered. So our decisions become more aligned with true self, our true desires, our true values. We feel more at home in ourselves, and we're not just what other people are expecting of us. And then we get those deeper connections. This is the other improvement that comes from being involved in these teachings, because as you become more authentic, you start to attract and foster those people and those relationships with others, the ones that are part of your tribe, the ones that align with you, okay? And there's no mismatching and no kind of disconnect. So transforming friendships through self-discovery helps us to become more authentic. It helps us to find more empathy and understanding. As you learn to accept and love yourself, you can start to extend that to others around you. You're going to have so many more long-lasting relationships that are forged through authenticity and understanding of who you are. And just by virtue of practicing and working into those spaces where we're getting still and recognizing the glaciers, the coatings, the flavorings, we learn to become more present. We've trained ourselves to be in that space, and then that means we become better listeners. We become more engaging with others. We have less unnecessary conversations and less small talk, which just makes life more meaningful generally. So what I would encourage you to think about now is taking the time to cultivate a deep and meaningful relationship with yourself. in a world where we're often feeling disconnected more than ever, even though we have all this technology to connect us, yoga is a go-to discipline that's kind of stood the test of time, really, to move us towards self-discovery. It provides all the practices, it provides all the tools to explore yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, subtly. And by addressing the glaciers and embracing each moment, we can break free from our unconscious patterns. We can start to cultivate peace and ultimately transform our lives. So I invite you, lovely yogis, or maybe you're just aspiring yogis, I don't care. You are a self in this world, you have a soul, and it's time to take time to nurture that part of you. Nurture your inner relationship and start to unveil all the possibilities that await you. Remember, the journey of befriending your true self is really one of the most rewarding journeys that you can take. And if you're catching this in the month of July 2024, we are going to help walk you through how to practice in a way that is going to start to remove the glaciers, teach you about the glaciers, and ultimately find those practices that are going to help you to have a better relationship with yourself. So I invite you to come and join us and transform your life. Okay, that's all for now.